Hey there, it's Courtney from CM Storytelling, and I'm really excited to welcome you into another episode of Story Talk. This episode is a really special episode, I think, because it is really stripped down. And I think as I was rewatching it, my interview with Alison McNeil, who is the founder and chief creative officer of McNeil Creative Enterprises. Alison works with arts and culture organizations to help those organizations deepen and strengthen their impact in the communities. She does strategic development, she does fundraising development, she does basically just helps your organization thrive. And so as I was talking with Alison, I reached out to her about when we were about a month into the quarantine. And just from the beginning, the conversation was just very different. And you'll see what I mean when you check it out. We just chatted about the need to honor and recognize what we were all going through and continue to go through in this moment, in this global pandemic. And not being so quick to kind of jump in on 10. We're a few weeks removed from the conversation that we were having. So now folks may be more in a better place to kind of rev up their engines. But at the time, it was still very, it was still a sort of a visceral feeling, I think, for a lot of people of what was happening. And so, yeah, it was just really great. I'm kind of rambling and not being very focused. And I think that's just the nature of what I think about this video. I think that it is just something to listen to and sit into and settle into and not be so focused on, okay, what are the talking points I need to take from this, but really just appreciate and honor the space to be able to just kind of say how you feel. And so with anything, I hope that this video will just inspire you if you haven't yet during this time of quarantine, especially as folks are starting to open back up and going back to getting back into being around each other and interacting more. I hope that this video and this conversation inspires you to, before you fully get back into the thick of things, taking advantage of the few moments we have left to just kind of sit in stillness and in quiet and reflect on what you personally have gone through, how you personally have processed the emotions that you felt over the past several weeks, and really giving yourself that space to feel that and honor that and appreciate that, because I think it will make us all more empathetic, more compassionate, and more purposeful entrepreneurs moving forward. So this video is very stripped down, doesn't have a lot of graphics and photos and things like that, because I just felt like it was such a breath of fresh air that I wanted the video itself to breathe. And you can tell that as I'm talking to you, I usually have try to have a more slick approach to introducing these things, but I wanted to just kind of let it breathe. So here we are, we're going to breathe together, and we're going to have two parts to this because the conversation was so great. I didn't want to lose any of it. So here's part one of my story talk with Alison McNeil of McNeil Creative Enterprises.
Hello, Alison. Good afternoon.
Hi, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Thanks for joining me and talking a little bit about the life of an entrepreneur in this crazy, unprecedented time.
Absolutely. Unprecedented is the best word for it.
Yeah. So I just wanted to kind of chat with you about your business and kind of how you're just faring as a person in the midst of all of this, because I know it's so, it's a lot that we're all going through, and probably many of us haven't even kind of processed the magnitude of it all. Yeah. But just wanted to chat with you about how you're doing, how your business is doing, and how you're staying connected with the folks that you work with and your customers and clients. So how are you doing with everything that's going on?
You know what, Courtney? It has been a journey. Literally, this is my 4th week in the midst of this current state. I'm not going to say the new normal. I don't want to claim that. And each week I've had a very different experience. My work primarily serves the arts and culture sector, working with artists, arts organizations, grant makers in the arts service organizations, which are like trade associations. And instantly our sector was negatively impacted. We're talking about artists that went from having 12 months worth of work to not knowing if they're going to have any work until maybe 2021 at some point, instantly. We're talking about grant makers that maybe had ideas for how they were planning their funding based on their current portfolio that instantly had to shift and be responsive to the moment and create emergency funding. And were instantly required to reimagine what it takes to get money out of the door quickly. To other arts organizations that had to face furloughs, furloughing people, laying people off, to other freelancers like me, just instantly learning, okay, what does my life look like now? And so I've been just sitting with that and trying to be responsive in my own way, but also just aware that that comes with a lot of trauma, and wondering for me and for the people that I work with, because of the work that I do, which is all rooted in change, creating new systems, creating new operations, examining how well we're doing what we say we're trying to do. I'm just very mindful of the impact that trauma has on how we move through the world, given what's happened. And if new policies will emerge because of what has happened, like those sorts of barriers that made it difficult for certain people to thrive, now, because of the emergency funding, has been like, everybody just, let's support. And so that's very different for the way that many people have operated. So I've just been reimagining what it means to do work in this field. I think it's, as crazy as it sounds, I think some innovative approaches will emerge in this moment. So yeah, I don't know if that was I don't remember your actual question, but that's how I've been doing, just sitting with this, reflecting about what it means for the sector, how the way that I operate already is in alignment with meeting people where they are, versus where they should be for some people, or coming with any judgment. It literally is, let's meet where we are right now and start.
Right. Yeah, and I love that you talk about just needing to kind of meet people where they are. I think that, especially in kind of the entrepreneurship space, there's a tendency to sort of think that everyone has to be on the same setting at the same pace. So, thinking that everyone is going to kind of rebound and bounce back at the same pace. And it takes everybody their own time to sort of process what's going on emotionally for themselves, just as individuals. And then, put on your business hat and say, okay, how do I do anything related to my business? So, I think it's important for us all to remember that everyone's not going to be sort of on level 10 out the gate. It takes some of us, time to kind of get to that point.
And that was my journey as well. Like it's maybe the gift and the curse. It takes me a moment to just sit with what is, so that I can offer insights that will be both responsive, reflective of the current circumstance, and mindful of what's realistic for the people that I work with. And because that is my process way of being in my personal life, it's shown up in my business, and literally it's directly aligned to my values, the values that I have for my company, which are transparency, compassion, and curiosity. Because of the work that I do, where we're literally talking about how do we change so that we get to where we want to get to, we can't get there unless we're transparent enough with each other to identify what got us where we are, recognizing that there's no room for judgment. Like, we did the best that we could, which offers a bit of compassion. But the two help us get curious so that we're not judging it. We're honest, but we're like, oh, so when that happened, that was like the natural, snowball to the, so that we can literally see, okay, is that contributing to our success or hindering it? And so I have to, in my personal life, also kind of go through that same process, which for me was why I couldn't instantly jump in and create this new course or jump in to conversations with some sort of sound platform for where I was going next. I literally was like, what is the next best thing that I can do given where I sit and given the way that I operate? Because I also make it a policy to not work with anyone that doesn't, I shouldn't say that's not willing to embrace those values as a part of the journey, which I recognize that means that will be some people and not others. But what I know based on that journey, based on those values being embedded in the journey, we learn so much about each other along the way that by the time the actual work is done, it's like a celebration. It's really powerful. We've formed a real partnership and each have our own role in our success or, my client's success. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what your sort of pre-COVID business life was like in terms of working with your clients. What were some of the things that you helped them with, and how has that shifted now?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I've been fortunate. Let me knock on some wood. You never know.
Right.
And I always remain grateful that a lot of the work that I've gotten has been through referral. And so in some cases, I'm teaching courses to arts and cultural leaders around the country around strategy and program evaluation, like how to document the impact of your work. Because we know in the arts, that's usually the first thing, when people are thinking about sectors, the arts are usually at the bottom of the sector. Although I have to say, in these quarantine moments, we turn to the arts for restoration. We just naturally do it, not even realizing the impact that it has on our lives. But yeah, so teaching, I'd be hired to do some strategic thinking with organizations that are trying to figure out, we are riding pretty fine at, at a certain level of productivity and revenue generation, but we want to take it up to the next notch. So it's like an operational assessment. Like, what are you doing in your business that is helping you, maintain whatever growth you have, and what could you be doing to do things better? So it's like operational assessments, and then program evaluations where we're looking at what's already been done and reflecting on if and how it met the goal and what needs to be done differently, if anything at all, to continue the work of the mission of the organization or the program. So I'd say 9 times out of 10, I've just gotten into executive searches. And again, all of these have been people like, hey, we think that you would be good at this. Now, my training has been in evaluation and leadership design, program design for leadership development. But this new avenue that I'm entering in now, I'm really excited about it. One, because I have a personal interest in creating spaces where Black women specifically can thrive within leadership positions in arts and cultural organizations. So that's not to say that my goal is to only search for Black women, but it is to create a search process that encompasses practices that embed equity at the center along with inclusion, and just create more equitable opportunities, I'll say, for some of the organizations that end up driving policy in our sector.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so now, what are people calling you? Are people calling you, asking you for different things now related to COVID-19?
You know what? I would not say that my calls have been different. In fact, I had four contracts that were in the flux, if you will, when things got off the ground, when COVID-19 got off the ground. And honestly, Courtney, I was like, I don't know if any of them are going to fly because of the moment. Things could literally, these projects, while important, the work could just fall by the wayside. And given all that's going on, I felt like I couldn't, quote unquote, be greedy and expect them to just stay. And then I spoke with each client and they were like, oh no, we love the work that we're doing with you. We actually, given the moment, think that it's even more critical now because it's making us be more mindful about, what our artists need for the grant maker organizations that I was working with. I think, let me think. I had two grant makers, two foundations that were clients, and two service organizations in the arts that were clients. And both of them, pride themselves on being of service to the arts and culture sector. And so luckily, they believed that in this moment, the work that we were doing together was still important. One of the grant makers decided to postpone our project by like 3 weeks, but even that is nothing compared to completely being done. And honestly, for that particular client, I almost was like, I think it makes a lot of sense because of where we were in the project and what they needed to do. It just didn't, timing wise. And I think the beauty in the way that our projects come together is we build a trust with each other so that we can be in open conversation. And believe that what the other person is saying is toward the betterment of the effort. So I open conversations post the COVID, let's just center ourselves on all that's happening and recognize that the next phase of where we were in the project was critical for the journey, but in this moment, we might need to revisit if the timing makes sense. And I think even for them, they were like, thank you for acknowledging that, not all right, so what are we going to do next? It's not business as usual because our sector is falling apart. I don't want to say falling apart, but unraveling at its seams. So when speaking about if my business changed, my actual clientele, not necessarily. But what I did do in response to the moment was try and provide as many resources as I could to the artists and arts organizations and even grant makers that I knew of. So one of my clients, a foundation who just started investing in the arts, they're a health foundation. And I love working with them. It's just really powerful, not just what they were trying to do, but how open they were to the journey. And so I started sharing artist specific resources with them because now, because of their program, they have artists in their community. And it's please just get these resources to your artists and consider ways that you might make opportunities available for them. And so then they told me that some of the funding that they'd set aside for the program that I helped evaluate is now going to be earmarked for some emergency funding. And they started sharing the resources. So that was one way I showed up on my social media site. There was this, there were 3 or 4 women that started to put together a portal of resources on this website. And I knew very well that my role was not to create the portal, especially if it already existed. Oftentimes, there's so many different things that do the same thing. I was it's not a good use of time and space for me to create a whole new one. But if I could be a vehicle to direct folks to that, that's what I'll do. So I put some posts on my social media hey, these are COVID freelance artist resources. And then I just told them to go to my link tree. when they went to the link tree, they were directed to that website. And then I started just posting it all over social media and sending it, texting it to artists, texting it to people that I knew were friends of artists, just so that people had it. And as the funding expanded, just kept adding to either my IG story live and then pinning it under field opportunities, or just, I felt like my goal is not to create the work. It is maybe to share it with the people that need to hear it. And then my other role has literally been just talking to artists. Like, what are you going through? Based on what I know, who can I connect you with? And then, in a lot of cases, people are like, I got to pay my rent, or one guy I spoke with, yes, he needed money, but I think he also needed some emotional support. Again, speaking about this trauma, like, I was so concerned about him during our conversation that I started to share resources like, here's, the mental health hotlines or suicide hotlines, because literally I am concerned about that. For those people that, there's so many people, so many money advisors that emphasize this notion of having 3 to 6 month savings. But the reality is, because of the way the U.S. economic systems work within capitalism, it's just not possible for everyone. And when you're talking about a gig artist that gets paid by the gig that they do, that's just not the reality. And so I guess the way I've shown up, and I don't even know, I guess it's a natural overlap with my business. I just feel like it's me. It's just like, let's talk. Okay, let me direct you here. Or, all right, I found something else. Let me share this with you here. My intention through my work, wherever it shows up, is to create a roadmap to access, to remove the roadblocks that make it difficult for opportunity, and to highlight blind spots that make it difficult for people to thrive. And so I always say, if you see my name connected to anything in the arts, it's usually aligned with one of those things. Wherever my name is, like, or even if it's just me speaking on a panel, 9 times out of 10, I'm hopefully offering something that falls in one of those intentions, because I just believe that is what I was put here to do.